Codex Siberia.
Part 1.
The Awakening Ice. They say the cold preserves everything, but in Siberia, even secrets rot. My name is Elena Kovacs. I'm a linguist, a cryptologist, and, apparently, the kind of person the United Nations calls when a 12,000-year-old mystery gets dug up in the middle of the Siberian permafrost. The first time I saw the satellite photo, I thought it was a mistake. A perfect geometric shape buried under 300 meters of ice.
Square.
Symmetrical. Unnatural. 3 days later, I was on a helicopter, flying over the desolate expanse of white nothingness. No cities, no roads, not even trees. Just wind, ice, and the hum of military-grade rotors. The man sitting across from me didn't introduce himself. He didn't have to. His stare said everything. Ex-military, possibly intelligence, now riding shotgun for the UN science program. He handed me a dossier, thick and weather-worn. Inside was a name scrawled in black ink, Site K, 24. And below it, first contact attempt, 1973. Operation discontinued. Personnel lost. I looked up. He said nothing, just stared out the window as the chopper tilted toward the mountains. We landed at 0400 hours. The station was a series of prefabricated steel units bolted into the side of a cliff, like an outpost waiting for a war that never came. There were 6 people on the team, all hand-picked. 1 glaciologist, 2 engineers, a geophysicist, a medic, and me. I was the last to arrive, which made me feel like the guest at a funeral no one had invited. Dr. Kovacs, said a broad-shouldered man with an unmistakable Moscow accent. Welcome to the edge of the world. I'm Dr. Dmitry Antonov, lead on site. Don't mind the cold. It's the silence that gets you. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. That night, I reviewed the sonar data. There was no doubt. The structure beneath us was not natural. The outer walls formed a perfect octagon with what appeared to be a central chamber. Something was buried there, and we were about to wake it up. On day 3, they broke through. I stood at the edge of the shaft, watching as a laser drill bored into the final meters of ice. The moment the drill had breached, a thin stream of vapor hissed upward, ancient air, untouched for thousands of years. Then the ice beneath the rig cracked. Shut it down. Antonov yelled, but it was too late. The entire platform groaned and shuddered. A rumble echoed from below, deep, unnatural. And then silence. The drill operator, Yuri, leaned over the edge with a flashlight. It's hollow, he whispered.
And it was.
A void beneath the ice. Black, wide, and cold as time itself. They sent a drone first. The footage was grainy, but it showed what we needed. A chamber, perfectly intact, with walls lined in dark stone. At the center stood a monolith, at least 4 meters tall, covered in markings that looked wrong. Not runes. Not pictographs. Something else. Antonov turned to me. You're up. I descended alone, harnessed to a rope, with a camera on my shoulder and a journal in my pocket. The moment my boots hit the frozen stone floor, my breath caught. The silence was total. Not just quiet, absolute. I approached the monolith. The symbols were carved deep, weathered yet sharp. My fingers traced them instinctively, recognizing patterns that shouldn't exist. Some matched Proto-Sanskrit. Others mirrored Mayan glyphs. One resembled a carving I'd seen once, in a forbidden archive beneath Budapest. I took a breath, then whispered, "This is older than civilization." Behind me, the rope twitched. I turned, but there was no one there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the photographs we took of the carvings. Something about them pulsed. A rhythm I couldn't explain, like they wanted to be read. At 2:14 a.m., the power went out. Backup generators kicked in, but the uplink to the satellite gone. Then someone screamed. We found Yuri's body near the generator room. No wounds. No blood. Just his eyes, wide open, frozen in terror. The medic said it was a heart attack. But I'd seen heart attacks before. This was different. His fingernails were torn, like he'd been scratching at something that wasn't there. Antonov ordered a lockdown. But someone had already breached the outer comms room. The hard drives were missing. Only one person wasn't accounted for, Dr. Pavel Kozlov, the geophysicist. And that's when the real message came through. A knock.
Soft.
Deliberate. I opened the door to my cabin and found a man standing there. Not from our team. He looked old, grizzled, with a scar over his right eye. Dr. Kovacs, he said in perfect English. They never told you the truth, did they? Who are you? Name's Varnin. I used to work for them. KGB. Retired, sort of. He handed me a folded note. Old paper, worn edges, red wax seal. I've been watching the site since 1973, he said. Back then, we tried to open it. Lost 12 men. One survived, but went insane. I unfolded the paper. Inside a sketch, the monolith, exactly as I had seen it. But older. Hand-drawn. Below it, a line of text in Latin. Veritas in glaci dormit. The truth sleeps in the ice. Varnin looked me in the eye. They think it's a ruin, he said. But it's not. What is it then? He paused, eyes flickering toward the dark window behind me. It's a warning. Part 3. Echoes of the Ancients. I didn't sleep that night. Varnin's words echoed through my mind like a drumbeat. It's a warning. But a warning of what? By morning, Pavel Kozlov was still missing. The snow outside had stopped, but the wind carried a sharpness that cut through layers. We sent a drone across the ridgeline and found what was left of his parka tangled in the branches of a skeletal pine, 30 kilometers from the site. No footprints. No trail. As if he'd been dropped there from the sky. In the mess hall, Varnin spread out maps and photos from a leather pouch that looked older than I was. These symbols, he said, pointing at the monolith, don't belong to any one civilization. That's the point. They were meant to be universal. You're saying they were planted? He nodded. By someone or something that predates written history. We used to call it the Lazarus pattern. Every few thousand years, this code reappears. In pyramids, in cave walls, even in deep-sea wreckage. He slid another photo toward me. This was found in Tibet. 1938, Nazi expedition. Same pattern. I leaned in. The symbols were identical. Too perfect to be coincidence. And what happened to that team? He looked away. They vanished. I spent the next 2 days decoding every image we had from the monolith. With the right overlay, phonetic, not visual, something clicked. The script read more like a mathematical sequence than a language. But embedded in the flow was something else, a date. Or maybe a set of coordinates. Hard to tell. And then a single phrase repeated 4 times. The archive is not dead. I brought the results to Antonov, but he barely looked up from his reports. Keep this to yourself, Kovacs, he muttered. We've already got 1 man dead, 1 missing, and no uplink. Last thing we need is a panic over space gods and ghost codes. His sarcasm was paper-thin. He was scared.
So was I.
That night, the power surged again. This time, when I opened my laptop, a message flashed across the screen. One I didn't write. He is watching. Stop decoding. Or we all burn. I yanked the battery out and stared at the dead machine. Someone had gotten in. But how? I ran to the comms center, only to find Varnin already there, staring at a missing server rack and a small hole cut in the back wall insulation. Sleeper agent, he said coldly. Someone on your team doesn't belong.
Who? He looked at me.
I was hoping you'd tell me. By morning, the weather had worsened. Winds lashed the station. Antonov called a meeting, but he didn't show up. We found his body behind the storage unit, half buried in the snow. Shot once in the head. Execution style. No weapon. No witnesses. Varnin's face darkened. It started again, he said. just like 73. He pulled me aside, led me into a side chamber I hadn't noticed before. Hidden behind crates, it opened to a narrow tunnel. Old, Soviet steel plates lining the walls. This place was built on top of a Cold War relic, he said. They tried to suppress what they found. Failed. We followed the tunnel down to a sealed bunker. Inside were crates marked with faded Cyrillic.
Лазар, протокол первый.
Lazarus. Protocol 1. Inside, photos, fragments of a codex, pieces of a machine shaped like a compass fused with a gyroscope. And a map. A global one. Dozens of red circled the Earth's surface, buried beneath cities, oceans, deserts. All connected by magnetic lines converging at one point. Tunguska. We returned to the chamber one last time. With power flickering, I activated the frequency resonator Varnin had pieced together from the machine parts in the bunker. The monolith began to hum, then pulse. The carvings lit up, not with light, but with movement. The lines shimmered, reconfiguring in real time. Words formed. The signal has been heard. The door is awake. And then, a tremor. A low vibration beneath our feet. Something was moving below us. We ran. Above ground, the storm had picked up. The station was in chaos. The medic was missing. The glaciologist had locked herself in her cabin and refused to come out. And worst of all, someone had taken the last snowmobile. Varnin handed me a small black case. Inside, a crystal. The same shape as the one embedded in the monolith, but portable. This is what they came for, he said. It's a key. The codex was never just information. It's a map. And that, he pointed at the crystal, is the ignition. To what? To whatever they left behind. He didn't wait for an answer. We have one shot. We head west. There's a bunker in the mountains. If the map's right, it'll lead us to the Lazarus node. After that. He didn't finish the sentence. But I knew what he meant. After that, the world might never be the same. Part 3. The Lazarus Protocol. We left the station under cover of night, moving fast across the snow-covered plains. The wind howled like a wounded animal, and the cold bit deeper than anything I'd ever felt. But we didn't stop. Not when the radio crackled with voices that weren't ours. Not when we saw the flicker of headlights far behind us, zigzagging through the darkness. And not when Varnin muttered the words I never wanted to hear. They've activated the other sites. I didn't ask how he knew. I could see it in his face. The old spy had seen this pattern before, and this time the clock was ticking faster. The Lazarus bunker wasn't marked on any map. It took us 12 hours and a near-death fall into a frozen ravine to find it. Hidden beneath a crag of black granite, the entrance looked like a ventilation shaft, barely wide enough to crawl through. Inside, the tunnel opened into a chamber carved directly into the rock.
Dust.
Mold. And silence. But the walls pulsed faintly, as if reacting to our presence. At the center of the room stood another monolith. Smaller. Sleeker.
And waiting.
Varnin placed the crystal into a socket at its base. The lights flickered. A mechanical sound, gears turning, pressure shifting, echoed from deep below. Then came the voice. Not from a speaker. From the stone itself. Identity confirmed. Archive node activated. The floor shifted. A panel slid open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into utter blackness. We descended in silence. Every step felt like crossing centuries. At the bottom, the air was warmer, denser, as if the ice above had insulated a forgotten world. And in the middle of it all, the archive. A sphere, suspended in the air by beams of light, rotating slowly. Symbols etched in bands around its surface, the same ones from the monolith. But this time, they moved, shifted, formed sentences in languages I didn't recognize, then dissolved again. I reached out. The moment my hand grazed the surface, a pulse shot through me. Not pain, Not shock, but memory. Flashes of cities I'd never seen. Machines that could rewrite DNA. A planet burning. Then silence. Then the signal. I staggered back. What did you see? Varnon asked. I told him. His face hardened. They left this behind after the last reset. Reset? He nodded. The Codex isn't just a warning. It's a manual. A failsafe. For rebooting civilization after a collapse. He walked to the side of the sphere and pulled open a control panel covered in frost. Inside, 3 switches. Each one marked with a glyph. Above them, an inscription in Latin. Quando ignis cadit, memoria resurgit. When fire falls, memory will rise. The Lazarus Protocol, he said. Initiated, and every site across the globe goes active. Archives unseal. Technologies unlock. But there's a catch. I knew what he was about to say. You have to destroy the original codex to activate it. That was when the alarms went off. Motion sensors. Someone had found us. We moved fast, resealing the stairwell behind us and climbing into a narrow maintenance shaft that led to an observation post embedded in the cliff. Below, black SUVs. Men in Arctic camouflage. Not Russian. Not American. Private. Mercenaries. They moved with precision. Purpose. One of them raised a satellite dish. Another unloaded what looked like a high-powered EMP emitter. They're here to wipe it all, Varnon said. No protocol. No resurrection. Just silence. We had maybe minutes. Back inside, we prepared the failsafe. The original codex fragment, now in a titanium briefcase, had to be thrown into the archive core. The core would absorb it, burn it, and trigger the global awakening. But they were already inside. Gunfire echoed down the shaft. Varnon handed me the briefcase. You have to go.
Now. No.
We both. He grabbed my code. They want me. I'm the one they've been hunting. But you're the one who understands. I hesitated. He didn't. He shoved me into the emergency chute, slapped the release lever, and vanished behind steel as the hatch slammed shut. I landed hard in a snowbank 20 meters below the cliff face. The briefcase was intact.
So was I.
But above me, fire. They'd blown the bunker. I watched the cliff collapse in on itself, the archive buried in rubble and flame. And then silence. Not just in the air. In the codex. The glyphs on the crystal had gone dark.
Dead.
That night, I walked west.
Through the snow.
Through the cold. Carrying the last piece of a dead civilization. Not knowing if I'd just saved the world. Or doomed it. Part 4. The Red Snowfall. It took me 3 days to reach the outpost. A decommissioned weather station on the edge of the Ural Plateau, run by an old contact of Varnon's, a former MI6 analyst named Rafe Holden. He let me in without questions, just a long look at the frostbitten briefcase in my arms. You made it, he said, but I'm not sure the world's still here to be saved. He was right. Outside, the skies were turning orange-gray, dust clouds circling the globe. News reports, what little bandwidth we had, spoke of chaos, blackouts in London, riots in New York, viral outbreaks in Jakarta. A chain reaction had begun, and the Codex, the real one, had been buried with Varnon in a hole I couldn't reopen. But there was one last hope. Rafe showed me the files Varnon had left behind. Coordinates. One more node. Buried in Svalbard. We flew north in a smuggled utility plane, packed with solar batteries and what was left of the emergency gear. Rafe and I barely spoke. Time was slipping through our fingers like the sand of a broken hourglass. Landing on the edge of the island was rough. A storm chased us the whole way. But we made it. Beneath the crust of the snowfields lay the global seed vault, the so-called doomsday vault. But what the world didn't know was that under that was something else. A chamber older than the vault itself. A sarcophagus of stone. Inside the stone vault, hidden by layers of reinforced concrete, was the Mirror Codex, a backup. Varnon's real gamble. He'd never intended to ignite the protocol in Siberia. That site was a decoy. The real key, the one that would rewrite what came next, was here. Rafe helped me install the crystal into the console. The glyphs flickered. And this time, they didn't just speak. They sang. Vibrations filled the chamber, low and ancient, like the earth itself was waking from a long coma. A hologram ignited, showing the planet as it was and as it would be.
Floods.
Fires. Collapses. Then silence. Then rebirth. But we were too late. The system demanded 2 activations, dual authentication. Varnon had been one half, and he was gone. For hours, we searched the files, tried to override the sequence, bypass the security. Nothing worked. And then, an idea. The Codex wasn't just built on biometric locks. It was built on consciousness patterns, brainwave echoes, memory. I had touched the archive in Siberia. The sphere had shown me visions. It had read me. I hooked myself into the neural interface and braced for impact. What followed wasn't pain, it was drowning in history. Flashes of events, civilizations erased by time. A city swallowed by desert. A tower collapsing under its own ambition. A temple under Antarctic ice. And always the same whisper. From the fire we rise. I came to on the floor. The console glowed green. Authentication. Accepted. The system began to pulse like a heartbeat, and the countdown began. Across the globe, buried sites stirred. Vaults unlocked. Data cores fired up. The Lazarus Protocol was active. We stayed in Svalbard for the next 10 days. Watching. Waiting. And then it began to snow. Not white. Not gray.
Red.
Iron-rich flakes falling from the poison sky, remnants of the volcanic clouds mixing with atmosphere. But something else came with it. Signals. First weak. Then clear. Stations in Bhutan. In Namibia. In the Marianas Trench. All activating. All online. The new world was waking up. On the final night, Rafe and I sat outside the vault, wrapped in every layer we had. He sipped cold coffee, looked up at the sky. You think they'll listen this time? I stared at the stars. If they don't, there won't be a next time. And somewhere, deep beneath the ice, beneath the ashes of what once was, the archive waited. Not to warn, not to mourn, but to rebuild.